where we will talk about automating things. Okay, we will talk about automation, okay, based on some logic. So whenever you try to automate something, you need to define the logic, right? What will happen, when will it happen, what is the criteria which should be met, right? So that sort of things. So in Salesforce we have a lot of options of automating things, or putting logics, uh, but there are two ways of putting logics. One is the declarative way, the declarative method, without program, without a code, and the other is with the help of programming. So we all understand that with the help of programming, definitely we can write a lot of logics. But the good thing about Salesforce is that it allows you to automate few things without writing a single line of code. Okay, so there are four things which we are going to cover under business logics. Okay, first is formulas. Second is validation rules. Third is workflows. Fourth is approval process. Okay, the formulas, validation rules, workflows, and approval process. So these are the four declarative methods of defining business logics. Declarative. Apart from this, while we start writing program, which we are going to start in a few sessions, then you can define a lot of things and you can write your own validation rules for the data, and a lot of logics can be written in the program using the code. But without using program, these are the four ways which Salesforce allows you to define your own business logics. Okay, so let's get started with the formulas first. So formula is pretty simple. So let me talk about formula. Formula is very simple. It's a field type. Okay, you must have seen, while you create a new field, you must have seen a field type called formula, right? So this is a field type where you can put a formula. Okay, you can write a formula in the field type. Okay, and this formula can use a reference from some other field. So this is something which can be done on the formula field. For example, you have a field amount, you want to have a field tax. Okay, so amount is where the end user puts the value. Tax can be equals, let's say, 10% of amount. Got it? So if you make this tax as a formula field and write a formula there, it will automatically calculate its value with reference to the value from the amount field. Got it? So this is one very common thing. You will use it a lot of times in a lot of situations in your database, in your application design, right? So one, it can help you do mathematical calculation. Secondly, it can help you do some sort of categorization of records. One more example which I can tell you is, I'll just give you an example. There is this client who have a huge database of accounts. Okay, now they do research. They have a process that they have a small team which will keep on researching the data, and once they have done the research on the data, there's another team which would do the calling of the data that was researched by the research team. Okay, now once the salespeople start calling, they do not have that bandwidth of calling all of them. Right, let's say my research team is finding out, I'm just sharing this example so that you have some idea on some practical scenarios also. So there's a research team, let's say they research 100 accounts in a day. Sales team just has the bandwidth of calling, let's say 20. They cannot call all 100. Okay. So now they needed some sort of criteria, some logic to be applied. They cannot just randomly pick 20. Will it be a good idea if they just pick any 20 and call and leave the other 80? They can do that, but that will not be a good idea. So instead what they started doing is they started categorizing the accounts into different categories. Cat A, Cat B, Cat C. Okay. So, and for categorizing, putting Cat A, Cat B, Cat C, they used to consider the revenue of the company. So there was a certain criteria that, okay, if the revenue of the company is more than this, and they had a event tool that they used to design and sell. So there was another field where they had an option that does the company have an event in next 45 days or so. So if that event is yes or not, fine. So any company which has an upcoming event, again that was a criteria for being in the top category. So that is how it is. Right. So if the company has event in next 30 days, it becomes high priority. If it has an event in 60 days, it becomes second priority. That way. So now someone can manually sit and do this, but doing this manually is again a time consuming thing. The person has to look into every account and see the revenue, see the event, and then decide A or B. If you put a formula, this category thing, if we put a formula and say something like if revenue greater than, let's say, 100,000, whatever, and event equals yes, fine. What do you think? Then I say make it Cat A. Fine. So these kind of things can also be done using formulas. So formulas do help us do a lot of such things, right? Let's see how a formula is created. Formula field. So I'll start with this simple example of tax, as I told you. So I'll do it on opportunity object. Just go to setup. Customize opportunities fields. Click on new. Here is the formula type. Okay. Once you select the formula type, it will ask you for the field label and name. So let me put it as tax. Then it would also ask you about what is going to be the return type of that formula. What value will be returned? So I say return type will be currency. Tax is going to be currency, right? Make it 0 decimal places. Go to next. And this is where you have to write the formula. Okay. So tax equals to what? This formula needs to be written in this area. You can use insert field option to insert any of the fields. Because if you don't remember the name of the field, then you can always use the insert field option. Okay. If you remember the field name, you can simply type it. So my point is 0.1. So tax is equal to amount into 0.1, which will make it 10% of the amount. So that's fine. Do a quick syntax check. If there is any syntax error, it will be shown here. There is no syntax error, it is fine. We are good. Just click on next and that's it. Got it? So my tax field is created. Now let's go to opportunities. Open any of the opportunities. See this? So it has automatically calculated the tax for all the existing opportunities as well, and those have got updated. Fine, simple. So this is how we put a formula. Okay. Now the next thing that we are going to talk about is a validation rule. Okay, validation rule is a rule to validate data. So like formula was a data type or a field type, validation rule is a rule. Okay, and this is a rule which will validate the data. Okay, before a record is created or edited. So before you create or edit a record, after creating a record or editing a record, once you click on the save, it validates the data. Are you entering the correct data into that database table or not? Okay, that's a validation rule. Okay, so we can define this rule from our side. For example, I want to validate the data. You say that amount cannot be less than 10,000. So this can be a validation rule. So every time, let's say your company has a policy that will not take any opportunity which is less than 10,000 in amount. That's too small opportunity. So in that case, you have to define this validation rule. Got it? So where you have to say that amount cannot be less than 10,000. And this is the criteria of the validation rule. This is the rule criteria. Okay. Along with this, you also need to define error message. So validation rule basically has two things. One is the error criteria, and let me put it like this. One is error criteria and the other is error message. So error criteria can be something as simple as if amount is less than 10,000, error message is this. The error message is the message which will be thrown to the end user. So you have to define two things in a validation rule. Okay, and once you have created a validation rule, since it's a rule, you need to activate the rule. So it's not like formula. In formula there is no concept of activating, deactivating, because that's a field. Field is always on. But because it's a rule, validation rule, uh, as it's a rule, it needs to be activated. Okay. So you just have to click on activate, or you can also make it inactive for some time if you don't want that rule to work. Some exceptions. So you can just deactivate the rule also. Alright. So let's go and create a small validation rule. So let's define the validation for opportunity. Go to setup, customize, opportunities, validation rules. You find it here. Click on this. Click on new. Opportunity rule, whatever. See, it's active right now. You always have the option of making it active or inactive based on your requirement. Okay. Now this is where I have to write my error condition formula. Error condition is amount less than 10,000. Okay. So if the formula expression is true, display the text defined in the error message area. So if this is true, it will throw error. Amount cannot be less than 10,000. Okay. And you have the option of displaying this error message at any location. You can display it at the top of the page, or you can display it beside a certain field. Okay. Let's say I want to display it beside amount field. Save it. My rule is active. Now if I try to create an opportunity which is less than 10,000 in amount, it will throw an error. So validation rule automatically works on update also, not just new records being created. When you edit a record, that time also validation rule works.
Ajit,
Yeah.
can this validation rule work on already existing record?
It will work on already existing record, but for that you have to click on edit and then save it.
Okay, but if there are some with amount lesser than 10,000, it won't do
Nothing will
anything
happen.
until.
No.
Okay.
So those will not get affected, because let's understand it. It's like a security guard who is sitting at the main entrance, right? So when save operation is happening, that is when this validation rule gets triggered. Okay. The data which is already in the database, validation rule is not actually doing anything on those records. Got it?
Okay. So if we want to do that, we can check and run a query like if there are some existing records with less than 10,000
Yeah.
for creating this validation rule.
Yes, right. That's correct. Or you can do, basically you can go and try and update some of the records and see if some records fail in that or something. But you know, usually what happens is whenever we try to put any rule, not just this validation rule, we don't usually we don't disturb the records which are already there in the system, right? Because anyhow, if you have to manually, when I say manually, I say by running a query, if we have to check which all records are less than 10,000, then we can manually correct them as well, do an update and make them more than 10,000 or remove them. But this validation rule is more useful when someone is entering the data. Correct. So
Yeah.
for that reason. So it does not affect, any other rule will also not affect the existing records. Okay.
Okay.
So will throw an error if you are using data loader to insert data?
Validation rule, yes.
So
Validation
it
rule
won't
is,
allow.
sorry?
So it won't allow when the amount is less than 10,000?
Yeah, no, it will not allow. So validation rule is also, something which is global. So whether you are entering from a certain page layout or you are entering from the data loader, it is applicable everywhere. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, you just have to make sure that the validation rule is active. Sometimes, let's say, that's again a good question. Sometimes it happens that while you are uploading the data, at that time you don't want the data, this data loader to throw an error. Let's say I've taken old data. Last year in 2014, my company did not have any such rule that amount cannot be less than 10,000. This year they have come up with this rule. Okay. Now I have taken out the data for some cleansing activity and I want to put the data back. Okay. Now I have opportunities worth 6,000 also. Validation rule will not allow me to put those back, right? So in that situation, before you run data loader, make sure you deactivate the validation rule, switch it off, put the data back, and then again turn it on. Got it? So that is how it should be done, so that you are able to put your data also and it does not get affected by the validation rule. Okay. So that's about validation rule. That is how we put validation rule. Third is a workflow. Now, workflow is basically again a rule to perform some action based on some logic. Okay. So workflow rule is something which can, validation rule was just validating the data, right? Workflow rule can perform some action based on some defined logic. So when I say action, what do I mean? Let's say send an email. Okay, so workflow rule can automatically send an email based on some logic. Assign a task. Field update a field. Okay, and send outbound message. So these are the 4 actions which a workflow can do. You can automatically send email based on some logic. You can assign a task to some user based on some logic. You can update a given field, or you can send an outbound message. Outbound message means send a message to an external system. Okay. So let's say again, let me give you a practical scenario. I'm actually working on an application currently, and I'll give you a scenario on that. This company is basically into providing trainings. Okay, they do trainings. They receive inquiries from students. Okay, and the moment there is a lead which is entered into the database, they want to send an automated email to that student. Okay, so that is basically the criteria that they have. Okay, so here what we can do, automated email. So what we will do, we can put a criteria. Our condition can be when lead is created and email is not blank, because to send email we need the email field should not be blank, right? So this can be my condition. Action can be send email to email field, to the email ID mentioned in the email field. Got it? So when a lead is created and email is not blank, action should be send email to the email field. That is the thing. Got it? So now let's do that sort of thing here. To define this workflow rule, go to setup, create workflows and approvals this time. Okay. Click on workflow rules. Click on continue. Define a new rule. Which object we are going to define the rule for? Lead. So select the lead object. Go to next. It's pretty simple. Select the object. Give the rule name. My rule name is intro email to lead. Okay. Okay. Now there is something called an evaluation criteria that you have to define. You have to define when do you want this rule to be evaluated. When a new record is created, or every time a record is created and edited, or when a record is created and any time it's edited to subsequently meet criteria. Okay. So if you select the first option, the rule will get evaluated only when a new record is created. Okay. If you select the second option, then what will happen? This rule will get evaluated every time someone makes a change on the record. No matter what is being changed, what is being edited, every time someone edits it, the rule will get evaluated. Means an email will be sent every time you make some changes into the record. Right? You go and change the company name in the lead and save it, again one email will be sent. So that is not a very good option as far as the email sending is concerned. Alright. Third is created and anytime it's edited to subsequently meet criteria. So this option is still better, that anytime it's created or if it is edited to meet the criteria. So whatever is the criteria, if it was not meeting the criteria earlier, okay, let's say in this example, what is my criteria? My criteria is email should not be blank, right? Let's say, so that is the criteria, which means the email will be only sent when the email ID is provided. So let me say there is a lead which got created with the name Ravi Nagar, but it does not have any email. Okay, lead got created, saved, no email. The email was not sent, right? After calling Ravi, my company, salesperson asked his email and he told his email as ravinagar@gmail.com. Okay, now we updated it, saved it. Okay, so now this is where this record is edited to subsequently meet criteria. So this time it is being edited to meet criteria. Earlier it was not meeting the criteria. Now with this particular edit, it meets the criteria. So now it will send the email. Okay, so this third option talks about that. If you had selected created, then it would not send email if you add the email ID later on. So let's select the third one. That seems to be okay for this situation. Okay, then define the rule criteria. Rule criteria is pretty simple. Email should not be blank, right? Lead email not equal to blank. That's it. And then you define the actions here. Add workflow actions. What all actions you have to add? Email alert. You want to send an email, right? So I told you there are 4 options: task, email alert, field update, outbound message. What do we want to do here? We want to send an email. Just click on email alert, new email alert. Select an email template. So we have some existing email templates. However, we can create our own email templates as well. You see the communication template thing here? So you can go and create your own email templates as well. Click on this and you can just create your own email template and use that. Alright, so I've just picked one of the email templates. Whatever email template you want, you will select. Select the recipient type, who's going to receive the email. For me, it's going to be an email field. You want to send the email to the email field which is there in the lead, right? You can send the email to anyone. You can send it to the user, you can send it to the owner, role, okay, related contact, whatever. Okay, so all these options are there. I want to send it to the email field. So that's there. Click on save. Okay, and done. Now once your workflow rule is created, you have defined everything. You have defined the evaluation criteria, you have defined the rule criteria, you have defined the rule criteria, evaluation criteria, action we have defined. Now the only thing that we have to do is activate this. Okay, so here we have an activate button for activating this rule. See, this is not yet active. So same way like validation rule, workflow also needs to be activated. Just click on activate button, it gets activated, and that's it. Clear? Now this got activated. You can go to which one, leads. Sorry, we created it on leads. Now you can go to leads, try creating a lead and see if it is working. Okay, let me put. So the email will be sent to this email ID. This is the email ID which is supplied here. Okay. Click. Let me just go to my Gmail and see if I received an email.
Will it show anywhere here that email is sent?
Sorry?
Will it show anywhere here the email is sent or not sent?
Not on your contact, not on the lead. It will not show there. If you manually send an email, that is something which will be shown here. I'll just show you. Okay, in my Gmail account, you see this is the email that I have received from Ravi Nagar. Thank you for your inquiry. This was basically the email template, right? So this workflow email will not be shown here because there can be a lot of workflow emails which are being sent, and Salesforce would not show those things. However, you have an option of manually sending an email from here to the lead. If you see this, so if you send an email from here, that will be shown here as an activity history, but workflow emails are usually not shown as activity history. Okay, so clear on this part, on the workflow rule, how it is being created? So in this action, there are two types of actions here. One is immediate action, the other is time dependent action. So this time dependent action is basically where you can define a time that, okay fine, don't send the email right now, send it after 24 hours or send it after 2 days. Sometimes it also happens, right? You just want to send some email before something or after something, so that is a time dependent action. Got that? Just give me one moment. Okay, yeah. So we are clear with this formula, validation rule and workflow rule. Let me know if you have any questions. No, I'm going to give you a couple of documents which have a few examples, both on the formula validation and the workflow rules. Okay, I want you to work on those. And there is another thing that I talked about, which is an approval process. So approval process, I think we'll start talking tomorrow. In the meanwhile, let me just show you the documents which I'm going to share. One minute. So if you see my screen, This is one document where you can work on a lot of formulas. So this has a lot of examples of the formulas, and you can use those formulas, understand those, like create a formula that will create link to Google research of the account name. Okay, so this formula will automatically create a link to search the account name in the Google. So that sort of examples, a lot of these are there. Why I am sharing this, you can use this to learn more on the formulas, and you can also use this to think of a lot of scenarios which you want to discuss during the interviews. Okay, so this gives you enough material to discuss or talk during the interviews. When they ask you that what sort of automations you have done, or what sort of formulas you have done, you can, or what kind of a project you have worked on, you can use a lot of things from here. Okay, this is one. Secondly, what I'm going to share is the workflow rule examples. 1 minute. So this is another document which I'm going to share. This is completely on the workflow rules examples. Okay, let's say there is a workflow rule: notify account owner of updates by others. So if someone else who is not the owner of the account has made any update on the account owner needs to be updated. Okay. Set reminder for high value opportunity close date. So when high value opportunity are approaching the close date, you want to set a reminder. Notify key people about account owner changes. So if an account owner has changed, notify the key people. Report lost opportunity. So if there is a big opportunity which has got lost, report it to the management. So a lot of these examples are also here. So this will also give you good some confidence on how to design workflow rules, and your concepts regarding the workflows will become more clearer. You can use these examples during your interview as well, right? So I think these